What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Neptune Sunday.
What to do?
Your boy V Moss here with the homie Vogue. What's
It's
good?
me. Yeah, girl.
So, very important anniversary episode for 20 years of In Search of. We'll get into that. But first off, a couple things we want to chat about in the world of the Neptune. So, Vogue, did you happen to see the chaotic amazingness that was the Battle of New York versus on Tuesday night?
I actually missed it. I was devastated that I did. And I did a long search on Google trying to find the footage of it, but tell me about it.
I think it's on YouTube now at this point. One of my friends who is embracing his old age said he fell asleep trying to figure out how to watch it, but he watched it on YouTube yesterday. But I mean, it was great. I mean, I'm a fan of both groups. Like, something I mentioned before on the episode with the Neptunes, the Jay-Z and Snoop episode about how the time at Hampton helped me, get exposed to music from all over. Like, I was already a fan of Jada and them just from growing up as a bad boy guy, a bad boy fan. But to be exposed to Dipset in college was like a big deal. So yeah, I thought it was dope. I mean, obviously, like the thing about the verses is the showmanship, and you can tell who's prepared and who's been, really taking it seriously, and who is just happy to be there and just think they can just show up and do it. And so, um, there was a point, I think. So as we talk about the relationships, we get to the point of where this is connected to the Neptunes. There was a point in the show, because obviously this is like basically just like it's like wrestling at this point. It's all scripted. Um, at this point, it was a point in the show where I think they maybe had played Hey Ma, and then Jewels is like saying that the Locks didn't have any records for the ladies. And Jadakiss, who was by far the MVP in the show and the star of the show, takes over and says to the DJ, they say we ain't got nothing for ladies, basically saying that, and just went on a run. And like,
Whew.
I think the first song they played was I don't know if this is the first song they played, but the song that I know that really had people like crazy was Mariah Carey's Honey remix.
Ooh.
But then at some point he made it to Knock Yourself Out, which I
I was
think.
gonna ask when he played that. That feels like a game ender for me because that song is iconic.
So I think Knock Yourself Out is probably, to me, it's one of the best, I think probably in the top 20, 25 Neptune songs
Top
of
10.
the discography for sure. Um, I don't know if I would, maybe he didn't play it at that point. I don't know if that would necessarily be a ladies song. But anyway, at some point in the night, long story short, Knock Yourself Out came out, and it was the crowd reaction was what you would expect it to be. I went back and just randomly watched the video, and it's got like some random cameos, like Jamie Foxx is in the video. It was cool. And I also went back and looked at when Jada battled Fab one-on-one in verses, and I saw a clip, not of when he played Knock Yourself Out, but when Fab played Youngin, and it was weird because Fab's DJ was like he didn't want to play it or something, and Jadakiss was just like, play the record, like this is a big record. The DJ, I don't know, Fab's DJ was I don't know. I don't know what was going on there, but I feel like that's a huge record. There should not be any hesitation to play that record.
Oh
Anyway,
my God. Yes.
so yeah, I mean those two songs together, like very highly rated for me Neptune songs. But yeah, overall the verses was wild. I think I wouldn't say everyone that's done it, especially some of the older folks have had Neptune songs, but most of the hip hop people at least have had at least one between the two people that are battling. Like if we think about Nelly and Ludacris, Rick Ross and 2 Chainz.
Yeah. 2 Chainz has a lot of songs with them.
Yeah, so it was dope. Go watch it. Go find it on YouTube. It's definitely some crazy New York. And the most like, in addition, if you have the time, there's so much content in the world. We could just Like, I'm surprised we get anything done. But Fat Joe's recap of it is also amazing. He did
I
like
heard more about that than I did about the verses.
he did a 47-minute IG live, and he just, man, it's great to see these guys age and just embrace their new embracing the new technology, but also using that as a way to, you know, just stay relevant and do stuff that they feel like Fat Joe. I've never would even think about wanting to watch something that Fat Joe's doing, but it's just authentic of him sharing his experience with something that we actually participated in, which is dope.
Yeah, I was gonna say that makes sense for someone like him to have a spot like that. So I'm definitely gonna go back and watch that. I'm gonna look for the verses. Something else I also wanted to bring up that's kind of like new Neptunes news is it's also the 20th anniversary of Usher's 8701, and that has a couple of Neptunes tracks on it. It has You Don't Have to Call, it has I Don't Know with Diddy on it. I love that. There is no Black person in our age range that does not love that album. But those two songs specifically, I think, like made a big impact on me. Especially, I know I always bring up dance, but I know that You Don't Have to Call dance.
Like, I just remember that making of the video on MTV with the roller skate, renting out some mini mall somewhere, like not mini mall, mega mall actually. But yeah, I think You Don't Know is probably underrated. I mean, it's a strong. We know that Diddy doesn't write rhymes; he writes checks. So I'm interested to know who wrote his verse on that song because it's pretty good. But yeah, You Don't Have to Call is up there too. We talk about Youngin and Knock Yourself Out. That's probably up in the top 20, top 25 of Neptune songs too.
I agree. We're gonna have to do like a 20 definitive Neptune song episode at some point. I feel like it's gonna be harder to whittle down than we think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have a strong 20, but I played them for some of my friends when we were celebrating my birthday. I won't say what we were doing, but there may have been some champagne and some tequila flowing at the time. And I played these 20 songs for one of my friends who's really into music too. And he questioned me on a couple. He's like, I don't know, man, that's beatable. I won't get into what the songs are, but I think there's a strong case to be made for some, and there's some songs that, and that's the other part about it too. When you put yourself in the versus environment, like, it's not just about how well the song charted or, you know, how big the song is in terms
It's
of
about
sales.
like your personal stories connected to it. Because if you remember, like towards the beginning of the pandemic, when Versus first came out, we were talking about a possible Pharrell being on there, and you and I both did a playlist, two separate playlists, and the songs are almost completely different.
Right. Because it depends on your perspective, but it also, like, the showman and the event marketing person in me wants to, like, I want the reaction. So, like, I want to play songs that when people hear them in the sequence of a versus style setting, like, it's the scrunch your face up type. Like, I forgot about that. So yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, that was a nice little I like that. We got some other stuff still related, but not on the topic. But let's switch gears and talk about what we're here to do today. Special day. So for those of you guys listening to this, it's hopefully you're listening to this on Sunday, but we are recording this on the actual anniversary of the album release. So, you know, we mentioned the origin story of the Neptunes and Chad and Pharrell in the first episode, but as it relates to this N.E.R.D album, you know, Shay, P, and Chad were the group, the Neptunes, but then once they got hooked with Teddy Riley and they made their names as producers, you know, it became the time where they still wanted to explore this outlet of being a band and a group, so they needed a different name. And so they came up with N.E.R.D, which, for those of you, hopefully everyone listening to this knows that it stands for No One Ever Really Dies. Some more backstory about this, and Vogue and I were really surprised that we didn't know this, but still think that it's a really cool fact. So the name of the album In Search Of is borrowing the name of a show from the 70s that's about controversial stuff, paranormal activity like Bigfoot and UFOs and Loch Ness Monster, that kind of thing. Which I think they still have a new version of it. They have a new version of it that's on the History Channel.
Oh, I'm looking that up after we get off.
And so the show was hosted by Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy was famous for playing Spock on the show Star Trek. So now we have some obvious inspiration for the name of the label, Star Trek, which was started in 2001 as well. And also where the boys borrowed the Vulcan salute, made famous by Leonard Nimoy's character Spock on Star Trek. So it all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Star Trek, In Search Of, Leonard Nimoy, Spock, Vulcan salute, all that. Pretty cool. It's good to see how this all came up. And just to, like I said, this album came out right around the same time that the label was being started. So that's kind of, it makes sense that all that was inspired by, you know, this connection of this album to Leonard Nimoy and the show and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I always knew the general approach they took behind naming it Star Trek, but to have these little tidbits of how it really like involves some thought is pretty cool.
Yeah. The space, not knowing that specific origin, but understanding, obviously, when you see Star Trek, you know that it's a play on Star Trek. And so then, the space and all that, space BBC Moon Man suits, all that stuff makes sense. But then when you have this, go back to this part of it and tie it all together, it's pretty dope. All right. So for those of you who may not know, let's break it down that today is the anniversary of the drop of In Search Of, and the original release is different than the one that is on streaming.
Yeah, this is, if you know me, if you follow me, this is my biggest sticking point about this album. I am a big fan of the original release. It has more of the traditional electronic Neptunes sound that they have used over the years, and especially around that time, before their style developed. And I think I listened to, in 2001, I was in high school. I think I listened to that album so much that like I memorized it sonically. And it also has the presence of some skits that are omitted from the later version, and I think really adds some character that I do miss. But how do you feel about the difference between the two versions?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when we think about when this came out in 2001, August 2001, the leads had already been out and had some success, and the similar sound is how this first electronic version sounds, and I like it. I mean, obviously we're fans of Neptune, so it's got the traditional futuristic sound that they're known for. So I think it's dope, but I actually prefer the live version a little bit better, just because I have kind of a affinity to anytime live drums are added to hip hop or hip hop adjacent music, right? Like I love when Just Blaze will bring out the drum kit, or he will have, the guys from 1500 or Nothing actually come and play live drums on it. And when Pharrell did it on CeeLo Green's song called The Art of Noise, and also on song with him, it's Pharrell, Diddy, and Lenny Kravitz from the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack. So like I think that's always dope. But yeah, so I think it made sense for them to do the second version if they really wanted to use N.E.R.D as something separate, right? Because at the time when they were really on their way to blowing up, And so like this electronic version sounded like a lot of the stuff that they had been doing that was building their name. So if they really wanted, I think Pharrell's talked about this in interviews in the past, if they really wanted to separate themselves, it made sense to do this other version.
I agree. And I think that's something that, although I prefer the electronic version, which you cannot get in this country, I definitely see that the next two albums, Fly or Die, and what's the other one?
Seeing Sounds.
Seeing Sounds, my apologies. But like those, they don't make sense without this being a more rock-based album. They sonically, it would sound like they were doing something completely different. So the natural progression, because I actually listened to them all three in a row today. And it just makes so much more sense. And I would say on Fly or Die, they dive a little bit deeper into their rock bag. They start to bring on some rock collaborators. I think that Lenny Kravitz was also on Fly or Die. So I get the setup, I get the vision and where they were trying to go with it. And I appreciate it because Fly or Die is probably my favorite N.E.R.D album.
Yeah. And I think at this time too, they had just done some music with your people, with your folks, Gwen Stefani.
No doubt.
So when you listen to that song, Hella Good, it's got this kind of similar vibe to it, where it's still got the electronic synth sounds, but you still hear the live instrumentation in it that definitely kind of leads into the re-release version that we got in 2002.
Yeah, I listen to Rocksteady a lot, and you can definitely hear the influence. And I can imagine that like that was a very different sound for No Doubt. I also imagine that for Chad and Pharrell, it made sense to be like, okay, we now see what we're capable of working with this kind of music. Let's re-envision what we have here.
Right. So shout out to the group Spy Mob. I think they're based out of Minnesota. I don't know how Pharrell found them, but they're the group that actually added the most of the live instruments. I think Chad apparently learned how to play guitar too a little bit to help out. But Spy Mob ended up having either one or two songs on the Clones album too.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's also dope, I think, too. It's got a similar structure to the, like, when you think about it, I don't think this is probably intentional, but the same way that we talked about In My Mind has the regular version and then it has this Questlove version. It's almost like, I wonder if he did that on purpose to say, hey, we did that with In Search Of, even though we can't listen to In Search Of, the electronic version, which is terrible.
Right.
What record label do we need to spam on Twitter to get that out? We gotta figure that out.
I don't know, but like I said, I have been campaigning for this probably since I got on Twitter 10 years ago. So I will never stop until I get this album in the United States.
So what are your favorite songs from the album?
I had a hard time deciding. I realized that I have a very personal connection to Provider. So that song stands out to me. I don't really have a song connection to this album. I mean, a dance connection to this album, but I have a great story about Provider. I do want to give a disclaimer that kids at home, don't do what I did when I was in my early 20s, because we all do dumb things for love. But I was dating what one may call a drug dealer at the time. And so I heard Provider. It was about, selling drugs, trying to earn money, trying to make your way. And I felt this connection to my partner at the time. And I was like, I'm holding it down. I hope he makes it home. Thank God we both got out of that. But I just really love that song. I love the story. And that was something I don't feel like I heard in hip hop. Really, I think being a drug dealer was more glamorized than that. Not like, I need money, I am trying to survive, and that's why I'm doing this. And it's putting me and my family at risk, but I'm still making that decision. I thought that was an interesting story to tell. And apparently Pharrell, he talked to one of his friends who at the time was dealing cocaine and took inspiration from from him to tell that story.
That's dope. I mean,
literally dope.
glad that that story has a happy. Well, I mean, happy ending is like neither one of you being in jail or having any type of legal issue. So
I didn't have any involvement in that, is what I want to say, and that is the truth. I just knew about it.
yeah,
But that's not my favorite song. My favorite song is "Run to the Sun."
I really like Run to the Sun a lot too, a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I like the singles. Um, I think Lap Dance was strong, and I think it's partially because that came out. Maybe they decided to do the re-release version after Lap Dance came out because the video version is the original version.
yeah, it is.
So I love Lap Dance. Vita on the hook. I mean, I only can think of Vita's one song when she was with Murder Inc. and a couple of features on hooks, but I thought it fit perfectly. I don't know who made that connection, but it's dope. So
I like to know where Vita is now.
shout out to Vita wherever you're at. Mad love. The first lady of Murder Inc. back in the day. And then we got our feature rap verse from Lee Harvey. Another question of where is Lee Harvey now?
Do we want to know where Lee Harvey is?
So there apparently is a lost EP from Lee Harvey that's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure Chad had something to do with it. I only listened to it for a little bit. It didn't really hold my interest. Maybe I'll go back and revisit it after we have this conversation, but go check it out. Shout out to Lee Harvey too, wherever you are, bro. But yeah, I thought Lap Dance was solid. You know, we talked earlier about in just a regular conversation, obviously not the podcast because we're having the podcast right now, but we talked about how the lap dance anti-establishment government metaphors in there, and I got the sense of it, but I didn't really know. I don't think I got it as much as I get it now.
Yeah, I always knew that connection and lap dances being like emblematic of the government's unfulfilled promises to us, but it definitely does, to use a common phrase now, it hits different
Right.
after the past president we
Yeah.
had. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely, when I hear that song, I'm like, damn.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think lap dance brings people back to this album. I think it's been featured in a bunch of movies. Like it actually was on the soundtrack for Swordfish, which was I don't necessarily know if people liked it, but it was a big deal movie because it was Travolta and Halle Berry and Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman. Um, but then what is that you sent me earlier? Someone what's this new
Oh my gosh. Ruby Rose, I was on her Instagram stories today and she did she did a new song that uses the lap dance beat. And she actually was saying to people like tag Pharrell so I can release this song because she don't got the rights to it. But I
right?
thought it was pretty dope. And I thought this was the perfect day. She must know about the 20th anniversary too. It's the perfect day to put this back into the general atmosphere and just show respect to this album because like this album is still on people's minds. I saw so many people tweet about it, put it in their stories, say they were listening to it today. So go check out the Ruby Rose. She's the girl. I was trying to explain it to Vaughn. She is the woman who did the song "Bend It Over and Twerk" that you hear on TikTok all the time.
And I still don't know it. I literally on TikTok a lot. Talk. Look at me. I'm old.
I'm gonna send him a clip.
What other highlights or features from the album do you stand out to you? I know we talked about Bobby James a little bit. That's kind of a similar song to Provider.
Yeah, I got the same feeling of like not hearing a drug story told in that way because it's told from the perspective of addiction. And I think like a lot of people who born in the 80s, raised in the 90s, we have family members who have suffered from addiction. And I really feel like it's a slept on song. And for me, it highlights just like the subject matter range of this album.
Yeah, for sure. Another highlight of that song too is the outro. We get a little bit of a maybe it is our first No, not our first, but it's a really solid Chad on the saxophone
Yeah.
appearance, which is really dope. Back when I was managing a rapper, I suggested that he rap on that, like loop it, but
Oh, that would be great.
no one steal that idea. I'm gonna put it part out so no one copies it.
You can't
Uh,
forget Khalees. Khalees was on the album.
yeah,
Uh,
Khalees was there, Pusha and Malice were there. I don't know if he had changed his name from Pusha to Terror. I mean, from Terror to Pusha yet, but good to have both of those guys in there.
he was Pusha then. I think it was
That's,
still Pusha T.
yeah, and still, like we talked about before with Khalees's album, this being something that was featuring the whole family and having everybody be able to contribute. Um, I want to say there's probably some Vanessa Marquez like vocals on there somewhere. I can't. I heard something I thought about today, and I forgot to look it up. Maybe on like, maybe on Bobby James, or maybe on one of the
I'm doing a
slower.
little I'm doing a little background Google to see if we can see who's on background vocals. So I'll let you know if I find anything. Yeah, I don't see anything that doesn't mean that she wasn't on there. She may be uncredited.
Right.
In our usual, Vogue's gonna mention Tyler in every episode. This is definitely one of the albums he said made him a lifelong fan. So shout out to Tyler as always.
And for me, like, so me also going with the conversation about me enjoying the the instrumental version better because of the drums and the I actually grew up and hung out with like I had a very mixed group of friends. Well, I wouldn't say the group of friends was mixed, but I had almost two separate groups of friends.
Okay.
And one of my groups of friends from school was like some white kids that had me listening to Korn and Limp Bizkit and Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of the reason why I like that version too. Like Rockstar is, I love Rockstar. Like today was intense day, and so I closed the door and I played Rockstar a couple times on repeat, very loud.
Let some steam
And
off.
yeah, so I've always loved that type of music and that type of sound too, in addition to my love for hip hop and R&B and um, that kind of stuff. But the Rockstar video is dope too. I think it's got a random cameo from Be Real from why can't I think of
Flavor
the
of love, right?
no
No,
Be
no, no,
Real
no.
Cypress Hill. I don't know why he was
Oh, that Be Real. Oh my God. That's so
yeah
embarrassing, everybody. I'm sorry. It's been a long
yeah.
time.
So Be Real is randomly in it. But and like it fits the nerd. They look nerdy in it. Like they look like they're in a video and I don't know if they're trying to be extra nerdy or I don't know, but they look nerdy and it makes sense. But it reminds me of, back to me talking about my enjoyment of some alternative music. I don't know if you know this or if you've heard this before. And if you haven't, for anyone listening that hasn't heard this, there is a rock remix to All About the Benjamins by
Yes.
P. Diddy and the Family. And there's a video that goes with it the Rockstar video reminds me of it. It's a different setting. Like the Rockstar video is them in gym class, in the gym, in the high school. The All About the Benjamins rock remixes in a high school, but it's like they're crashing, like Diddy and Sheik and Loon and Jadakiss and Lil Kim crash some prom or something. So
Yeah, I vaguely remember the video, but I definitely remember that remix and it was amazing.
yes. I wonder, is that on streaming? I gotta look that up too.
We always leave here with homework. There was something else that we were talking about just in like our prep. The ability, there are a few songs on this album, Lap Dance, Tape You, there may be another one that I'm not thinking of right now, but just giving Pharrell in particular, because Chad was married with kids at this point, but giving him that space to explore sensuality, explore kind of having alternative views of sex and romance. It's not necessarily a song for the ladies, but it is a song about like freedom and exploration. And I thought that was dope. And it probably had its hand in helping me understand my own self. Because again, like this album came out when we were in high school.
Right.
So I remember being scandalized by the sex noises at the end of Tape You, actually.
Yes, I do remember that. And that's like for everyone, just to make sure it's clear, that's on the electronic version, which you can't hear.
Yes.
So
remember I said there were skits missing? That's one of those things. And I've actually missed it.
Yeah, because it's the skit of at the end of Tape You. For those of you who don't know, Tape You is basically about taping a sexual encounter. That's Pharrell singing about, you know, bringing someone else in and having that encounter be taped. The skit is literally the conversation of the people talking about what they're about to do, and then it leads into the sounds of it actually happening. So like, totally understand why that didn't make the cut, but at the same time, it does add a lot of, like, if you listen to any of the skits that came out on CDs or on albums when we were in elementary, middle, high school, almost all of them are absolutely ridiculous. Like,
oh yeah,
I remember one of the first, or probably the first album that I bought that I personally bought for myself that had parental advisory on it, and I wasn't supposed to buy it. I was 12 years old, and I bought Busta Rhymes' Extinction Level Event, and it's got crazy skits on it that are just like, bro, this is not appropriate for a 12-year-old to be listening to.
That's funny. I thought you were going to mention Jay, because I always remember the, okay, I'm reloaded, that skit.
I mean, like, so I mean, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. There's a difference in tolerance for sexually explicit content versus violent content, right? I think
True.
violence is a little bit more acceptable because there
You
are
like video games.
yeah, there are things in life that can be violent that are perceived to have good intentions in some points of it. So whereas sex is just bad. It's bad.
Yeah, it's a lot. Violence is a lot more normalized, I would say, for younger people than sex is. So to be able to engage with this content that way, even though, like I said, I was personally scandalized, but I grew to love the song, and I grew to, it just like opens up your mind and having a different understanding of sexuality, consent, all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other notes about the album that you want to bring up?
Run to the Sun. We talked about that already.
I did want to say about that song, I remembered after we talked about it, it really reminds me of, which was released directly before, there's a remix of By Your Side by Sade that the Neptunes did, and it kind of like feels like a precursor to that song. It has this, and I think that sets a lot of my sonic preferences. That is my favorite song on the album. I love that Sade remix. It's very like oceanic, soft, and beautiful. I just think that they've done some really good R&B style work, and I appreciate that. Run to the Sun for that.
Yeah, for sure. I think like we're talking about with the sexuality conversation is really Pharrell leaning into that role, into being, you know, the guy who can sing these love songs and be on these hooks and help take your hip hop and R&B track to the next level with some falsetto or whatever it is that he's doing. Like, I think that's dope. All right, before we go, let's end it on this. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 N.E.R.D full albums. Where does this rank in the 5? Don't have to rank them, just say the number that this one ranks.
Number 2.
Number 2. For me, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say number 2 as well, but I feel like we have different number ones.
What's your number one?
My number 1 is Seeing Sounds.
Okay. I vibe with that. Seeing Sounds is my number 3.
Gotcha.
Fly or Die
Yeah.
is my number 1.
Yeah. So overall, I think strong first album for them. If you listen to it and you think about it in the context of where they were at the time, it definitely fits. Both versions fit, right? Both versions really show the original version shows, hey, this is the sound, this is what we've made a name for ourselves. But then the release version says, we also are really about doing something different, and here's the sound too. And both are dope. And so shout out to In Search of 20 years ago. I mean, damn, 20 years ago was a long time.
It's making me feel old.
I don't want to do any more. I don't want to do any more of these anniversary episodes anytime soon. Anything. We're dating ourselves. You know, it's bad enough we're talking about some old songs, but 20-year anniversary of whole albums is just like, I'm not about it. But
well, to work in just one last modern comment, I don't think we talked about this, but they did acknowledge the anniversary with the Adidas collab shoe, which I thought was pretty cool. It's another way to bring it back up into the cultural consciousness. The shoe's pretty cool. I didn't have an extra $220 to spend on it because I wear heels mostly. But if you can find a pair, get one.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's dope too. Because I feel like I get the impression from interviews that I've seen of Pharrell, like recently within the past 2, 3, 4 years, like he's kind of in a space where he's really just embracing the new things that he's doing. You know, he's got a bunch of kids now, and so he doesn't do a ton. He doesn't seem like he does a ton to reach back or reminisce, but to actually collab and do, you know, use his partnership with Adidas to celebrate the 20 years of this album shows that, you know, it's important to him still, which is dope for us as fans.
Yes, absolutely. I am gonna go listen to this album again. I enjoyed talking about it with you.
All right, kid. Well, it was, like I said, good to do another episode to celebrate an album that was meaningful for us in our lifetime, in our maturing, in our coming of age, but no more anniversary episodes for at least the next few weeks.
We'll have something a little different for y'all.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening. Subscribe, like, share, all that stuff on social media and SoundCloud, and we will catch you on the next episode of Neptune Sunday. Peace and love.
Peace.